They're off, and they've jumped away for this Grade 2 Bet365 Charlie Hall Chase. Six-figure prize fund on offer for this race. First run in 1978, the 34th renewal of it, and last year's winner Nakarat has his white head narrowly in front of Time for Rupert into the first turn. Chief Dan George close up in third, and then Poquelin, who races quite enthusiastically, Walsh with a tight grip of his head in fourth, ahead of the nose-banded Weird Al. The second of the brace of greys in the race, Chicago Grey, and then a 4 or 5 length break to the rank outsider, Akrai Rua. The biggest shock in the history of the race if he were to win at 40-1. Balibao Rasha, currently the longest prize winner of the Charlie Hall. So they go to the first. Time for Rupert and Nakarat. And Nakarat was in close. He was comprehensively outjumped by Time for Rupert, who took himself a couple of lengths clear of the grey Nakarat, and then Chief Dan George, Poquelin and Weird Al next at the first of the ditches, and then Chicago Grey and Akrai Rua rather ballooning it in last place. So quickly to the third. Time for Rupert, stretching the field out from Nakarat chasing, and then Chief Dan George. Poquelin still quite keen in fourth, ahead of Weird Al in his first start for Donald McCain. And then Chicago Grey. It's Time for Rupert leads them over the fourth, and Akrai Rua, the rank outsider, some 4 lengths adrift. So now to the second of 4 ditches in the race. It completes the jumping across in the back straight. Time for Rupert and Will Kennedy. Here's pricked for Time for Rupert, jumps well. Weird Al not so good there. Jumped across the fence and dragged his hind legs through it. But all stand as they begin the turn. So Time for Rupert, on just his 4th start over fences, leading up from Chief Dan George wide of Nakarat. A couple of lengths to Weird Al, shadowing Poquelin. Then Chicago Grey, Irish trained raider from the Gordon Elliott Yard, winner of course of the National Hunt Chase at the festival. And Akrai Rua on the flat has caught up a little, racing in touch. Into the final 2 miles of the Charlie Hall, they turn to face this next line of 4 fences. Time for Rupert from another former Cheltenham Festival winner, Chief Dan George on the near side. Then Nakarat from Poquelin, Weird Al, Chicago Grey, and finally Akrai Rua at the 6th. Time for Rupert just ahead on that occasion from Chief Dan George away to the left. Nakarat, a 6-time winner over fences, seeking to become the 7th horse to win the Charlie Hall more than once. Akrai Rua in last place, a bit low once again. Down now towards the 8th. Time for Rupert from Nakarat. Chief Dan George a little on and off the bridle. Nakarat in front there from Time for Rupert. Chief Dan George driven along. Weird Al out wide, travelling well. Likewise Poquelin up the inner, track by Chicago Grey, and then this break to Akrai Rua. So Nakarat leads them approaching the halfway point in the Bet365 Charlie Hall. He's got Time for Rupert coming back up on his near side. 3 lengths away to the driven along Chief Dan George. Walsh in no hurry yet on Poquelin, right down the inner, shadowed by Murphy aboard Weird Al. Chicago Grey at last but one in the hands of Tom Scudamore, and 5 lengths away to Akrai Rua. So they embark on a further circuit of the Wetherby Chase course, another 9 fences to jump. Nakarat and Time for Rupert exchanging the lead, just gathering a bit of momentum on the descent. Chased by Chief Dan George, Poquelin, then Weird Al just a length away to Chicago Grey, and the gap widening, it would seem, to Akrai Rua. Still about a 200 yards or so off the 10th. Nakarat, the near white Nakarat on the near side of Time for Rupert. Still Chief Dan George driven along, just holding 3rd. The leading pair jump well. Good leap from Poquelin on the outside. He and Weird Al form a pincer movement around Chief Dan George. Then Chicago Grey and the quickly retreating Akrai Rua. Another ditch. Time for Rupert and Nakarat as one. Weird Al over in 3rd, and then Poquelin. Chief Dan George struggling to keep up, then Chicago Grey towards the middle one in the back straight. Time for Rupert by a couple of lengths on landing. Nakarat not very high there. Weird Al under a patient ride, and then Poquelin, Chicago Grey, a break opening up to Chief Dan George. Good jump from Time for Rupert, putting a bit of pressure on his rivals there. Nakarat just ran down the fence a little in 2nd. Weird Al and Poquelin still moving with menace. Chicago Grey a couple of lengths off them. Final fence in the back straight, the last ditch. Time for Rupert comes up well. Landed 2 lengths ahead of Nakarat, and then Weird Al, and now Walsh just nudges away on on Poquelin, tries to keep the inner as they go into the turn. Chicago Grey 3 lengths down, so 5 still with some sort of a chance as they make the long run back towards home. Just under 3/4 of a mile to travel. 4 left to jump in the Charlie Hall. It's Time for Rupert, stalked by last year's winner Nakarat. Weird Al out wide, Poquelin up the inner, and the other of the Greys, Chicago Grey, still in the thick of the action as now Walsh becomes more urgent on the inner on Poquelin, and Time for Rupert is pressed again by Nakarat. Race on in earnest now. Now the gallop unwinding down towards the 4th last. Time for Rupert, Nakarat, Weird Al still travelling well away to the left. Murphy sitting quietly, 4 from home. Time for Rupert jumping well, a length up on Nakarat. Weird Al is eased into contention, now goes for run between horses. 3 of them breaking clear. Time for Rupert down to the 3rd last. 2 lengths ahead, chased now by Weird Al. Nakarat looks beaten off. Time for Rupert then down towards the 2nd last. Now Murphy nudges away on Weird Al. 2 from home in the Charlie Hall. Time for Rupert only a half length up. Weird Al joins him. Down between the final 2 fences they come. Weird Al puts it up to Time for Rupert, and Weird Al strides on. Here's the last. Weird Al a couple of lengths up. Time for Rupert chasing him up the run-in. Weird Al finding plenty though for Timmy Murphy's urgings and beginning to forge clear on his first start for Donald McCain. And Weird Al is showing his class, and he wins the Charlie Hall. Weird Al from Time for Rupert came well clear of Chicago Grey, Nakarat, and then Poquelin.
2 very smart unexposed horses over fences, coming well clear of the remainder. Weird Al travelled so sweetly under Timmy Murphy.